I'd love to understand, what was that research process like?
Yeah. So when I realized that I needed to learn more about this particular disease and how it affected someone that I cared about, I went to Amazon and I bought every book on Lyme disease. And that's where I told you before, there's the thick medical ones and there's the personal accounts, then there's the nuanced books. And I bought every book. Literally the summer of 2021, all I did was read about Lyme disease. This particular, someone had mentioned to me in the past that they didn't want to spend time on Facebook groups. So I went into Facebook, which at the time was a active user. And I typed in Lyme, 1,000 pages show up, 1,000 groups, Lyme disease, Facebook groups. I had no idea. Some of these groups had 1,000 people. Some had tens of thousands of people. And they're all talking about the same thing, whatever the circumstance was. Like I mentioned before, hey, I just tried this treatment, but it doesn't work. What do you suggest? And then 50 people would say, you need to give it more time, or you need to give up eggs, whatever it might be. And I'm reading these things, and I reached out to people and I said, can I talk to you about this? And some people were very kind. And I also knew some people. I also called anyone in my life who ever uttered the word Lyme disease and reached out to them and had conversations. And I was really trying to understand, what someone in my life was going through with this disease. And there's a lot of people in that situation. There's not as many who've heard the books, or do podcasts, but there's a ton of people who had to become what they call Lyme disease detectives, because everybody's circumstance is different and there's no silver bullet. There's no pill, like I talked to you before about the broken ankle. It's the same treatment for everybody. Yeah, maybe you need surgery ahead of time or something to reset the ankle or something. But for the most part, you're going to be in a cast for 6 weeks and you're going to do rehab almost invariably around the world with this disease. And even cancer, there's protocols for cancer. There's not like 1,000, there's, a couple dozen, if you will. For this particular, I'm not going to talk about cancer or anything, but for this particular disease, there's not one cure. A lot of it depends on your genetics. A lot of it depends on childhood trauma, things that have happened to you in the past. I remember I attended a webinar in the summer of 2021, and it was put on by one of the top Lyme doctors on the planet. And I remember I was kind of watching it. It was 8:00 at night and watching the webinar. I'm like, okay, I know that. This is only 3 months after I started doing all the work. And then in the 59th minute, Colin, he said, and by the way, if you don't address lingering childhood trauma, you're never going to cure from chronic illness. And I was like, oh, so dealing with childhood trauma is a thing. So then I went down that angle to try to figure out where that plays into this. And having a chronic illness like this causes a lot of anxiety, and it brings up a lot of things that are unaddressed, from your past. So if, it was funny, I tell people, I know it got me 4 clients. I know people now have referenced me. I get people all the time who reach out and say, my friend Joe said I should call you. People that I don't even really know, but I know from LinkedIn or something. And I tell people I didn't sit down in January of 2021 and say, okay, to grow my business, I'm going to have a bunch of podcasts. I'm going to do some webinars. We're going to do some events. I'm going to write a book about a very difficult disease. It just kind of happened because it affected my life. And, to some degree, I saw a hole. There was never a book or never anybody in my position. There's a lot of doctors, a lot of mothers who have children who are advocating. There aren't too many spouses. It's a difficult disease. It's hard to maintain a relationship. I had read that 75% of relationships with somebody with a chronic illness will end because it's just too difficult to focus on the relationship and the recovery and all the stuff that these diseases, do to you neurologically and mentally as well.